Hello, and thank you for joining us for Hello, Mayor. I'm City of Las Vegas Mayor Carolyn Goodman, and just a couple of months ago, I had an in-depth conversation with our superintendent, Dr. Jara, about his goals for the Clark County School District. We touched on school safety, but really want to tackle that conversation more today. There are so many sides to school safety we need to talk about, from weapons on campus to mental health. And Superintendent Jara, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Mayor.
Well, as we
again.
go off, it's wonderful.
Absolutely.
Do you know, and I have to start off before we start the very serious, well, not that this isn't serious, but the Board of Trustees, I noted for the first time in my lifetime here, is all women.
Yeah, 7 women.
Have we scared all the men away?
No, no. I mean, it's the electorate, 7 women on the board.
Well, lucky for them they have you,
Oh, thank you.
How difficult for you to have to deal with my sex, I am telling you. I know we are tough.
Well,
so
no.
Anyway, thank you, and thank you for being with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. This is great. Anytime you need me.
Okay, well, it's lovely, and we have questions. You know, it was very interesting back in October because I think so highly of you and everything you're doing. This came out on the paper. CCSD needs safety audits in order to qualify for funds. So that's going to be my very first question, because we're always looking for money for everything.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Mayor. And actually, you know, that obviously last year's legislation that passed around safety and the extra safety money that came in from the governor and the legislature, one of the requirements for us to be able to draw on the dollars, it was for us to audit our facilities. So it's not just, you know, say, hey, from the school system, here's what we need, but it's really to have an audit in every building. So we're going through that process now. Actually, we've had a vendor that's kind of coming in and looking. One of the pieces of the legislation is that we have to audit every single building, which is going to take us some time. Because the law is very clear. We were planning on doing all our different prototypes, but now it's just slowing us down a little bit. But I think you know, the team is working.
Excuse me for interrupting, but you know me. You've been here before
absolutely.
now. We have 356 schools.
We do, and every building has to be audited for the entry points, some of the different things that, you know, and how the kids get in, and the adults. So whether it's closed campus, 1 or 2, because, you know, we have some high schools that have about 29 different entry points. So we have to audit them and then submit it to the state with our grant. We're going through that process now. The board has already approved the audit because it was, you know, bringing in a vendor to do that work. And once we finish that, we'll send it to the state, and then they'll be able to drop on the money so that we can start doing the work.
So that's an outside of the state consultant that you've brought in, or somebody from within?
We did, actually. One of the things that we looked at, you know, we were going through this process before, and our police department reached out to, you know, put it out there out in the street, you know, for a bid. And the ones that we contacted was, you know, you go back to Parkland, and that's who we contracted with a vendor that did a lot of their work, and obviously they're experts. Right. So now that's probably the work that we're doing now, to look at our safety, look at our
And do you have a deadline for that?
Well, we do. We're trying to get it, you know, obviously some of the work that we have to do, it has to move very fast, because I like to start the new year. Not only to get the audits done, but then also do the work. So then we can try to expedite that process and draw the money. So hopefully for the start of the school year next year is something that we'd like to start
Because I just hate to leave money on the table, and wherever we can get it from the state as well as qualify federally.
Absolutely.
So thank you.
And we're working. No, absolutely, Mayor.
And I'm not even talking about instruction in the classroom. When you come back next time,
we'll
go into that one, because that is really my passion.
Well, no, and I know, but you know, and this is the important piece, right? I mean, our children have to feel safe so they can learn.
Right.
So this is a priority.
Well, and we as parents have to feel confident that the schools are doing the right thing to take care of our children. And of course, in the times that we're living in, with all those people who just want a moment of fame or whatever they're doing that are really imbalanced.
Yeah.
We've got to do more. And I think we can, although it's sort of like a dam that has a little hole in it,
Yep.
and you find it and you plug it, well, then it's going to pop out somewhere else. So
Absolutely.
we know this is something that we can work preventatively with. But thank you so much. And I know, I mean, I want to talk charter schools. There's so many things
Absolutely.
that, you know, that we're about. So, but let's get on to today. What is the Safe Voice Tips? What is that?
Well, you know, it's an app. It's really and we've had you know, over 7,000 tips that have come into our schools.
Now, let me stop right there.
Yep.
Where did they go? Did they go directly to the principal of that school? Did they go to your security, or did they come to your office?
No, it depends. So they're routed, it comes into the school, and then also for the night and for the evening, it goes into our police department as well. And we monitor the notification. And then obviously everything is investigated. Everything is something that we take
Within how
serious.
long a period of, let me assume
Yeah.
that
make
I'm
a
hearing
phone call.
from my child that he has found somebody very unstable over a period of time in his classes. He's a middle school student. So I use this app, I send it off today.
It goes
When
on
will
to-
it?
Well, as soon as we get it, it's instantaneously. So
Okay.
then we get, you know, whether it's set up at the school for an assistant principal to look into it, whether also in central office we have our student service division that also monitors, and then our police department. So then it goes into different buckets. And then we review it and we investigate whatever the issue is, whether it's you know, a threat onto our campus, or something where we've had, you know, we have a student that may be experiencing some difficulty and they
Right.
need help. So it's a way for us to get our kids to communicate with the adults anonymously, or even for parents.
Okay.
It's not just for students, it's for parents, it's for teachers.
Yeah,
and
that was, I was assuming, because hopefully in a good family structure with a caring, listening parent, or just an observing parent as the child gets older, notices the child is changing a bit
Yeah.
and has concern. Obviously, they would call the school, ask to have the teacher call them, have it, or go in and make an appointment and discuss with them, I'm seeing these changes in my child. Are you noticing it at school? How can I help
or even
you?
or even the counselor.
Yeah.
I mean, the teacher, the counselor, any adult. And the message that I continue to say is, you know, if you see something, say something.
Say something.
See something, say something to the adults. So then the adults can help the kids. Because kids, you know, they're trying to listen, they're trying to grow, they're trying to expand. Is how do we have the adults that are caring
But
adults
how
just trying
do
to
you,
help
I
them?
mean, to me, as you direct this, and hopefully we get instruction as parents or as the student, you have 320,000 plus students. 320,000.
Yeah.
So this demands personal attention,
It does.
and it probably needs almost a clear pathway of how you do when you have this problem, student, or this problem, parent, of an elementary school child. What is the pathway to take? How do they get that information? From the principal, from the teacher, rather than this app?
Well, we you know, we in the school, you know, communicate across the board through everybody, right? All the adults know. We've had media campaign around the schools. You know, we have posters that are in the hallway, you know, in the morning announcements. Secondary schools a little bit different, and always communicated throughout our PTA nights and different things around schools. And then also it's on our website. So then our parents have access to it. And obviously, you know, we can certainly continue to inundate with the communication out. It's something that we're working so that it's not just, you know, pigeonholed to just specific students or through the adults. But I think it just, you know, we've seen the increase in intake calls.
Yes.
So we're seeing it growing. It's you know, it's 2 years old. You know, but so we feel that it's been working now, you know, because it's getting the message to our schools. It's getting the
Well,
message
and
to
as
the
a
adults.
parent, you're not a grandparent yet, right?
No, not yet. No,
Thank-
thank
no?
God. Thank goodness. No.
You know, it's an interesting thing when I think back to raising our children and you as well, and having been involved in education for my whole lifetime, and you having gone through the entire process to the point of being a superintendent, but going through teaching. We all know a child from birth to 10 is a very different
Yes.
piece of God's work.
Yes.
from 11 on up, and I'm not sure where up stops.
I know.
Okay. So, but normally in a general range of evaluation, and my master's is in counseling, so that's where I'm going to this, the children they listen, or whether they want to or not, they do listen, Kate,
They do.
from birth to 10 generally. The question becomes, as they begin to adolesce, they tend to step back.
They do.
And listen to their peers, and that's in life. Everything we know is choice making,
Yeah.
and so it's if they're stepping back, and obviously it's a traumatic time. I mean, I remember my own teenage years.
I
So
know.
how do you balance
And
that?
see, and that's a piece where, when just exactly as you just described, Mayor, when our kids start stepping back, so do our parents, right? Because now
they're scared.
Now you look at our parents, they're all so involved in elementary school. They're the room parents. They're coming in. They're
Yes.
volunteering.
Yes.
And then when you guys start getting to that middle school, that 5th grade, that 6th, 7th grade, that's when we start losing the parents. That's why I continue to say this is when we need our parents to
Right.
start coming in so then we can help us. And one of the things that, in my strategic plan, one of the board strategic plan, Focus 2024, I'm calling for mentors, because we need caring adults on our campuses for our kids. Because when parents are so busy working, in this city, beautiful city that we live in, it's 24-hour city, and we have parents that are multiple jobs.
Right.
So how do we get more adults onto our campuses to mentor, to support our students in a way when they're starting to start listening to their peers, and then start making some of the choices that we don't want them to make?
Right.
So we can steer them the other way around. And also for us is, how do we help? I mean, I still, my wife at night checking the phones for the kids, when they're asleep, right? I mean,
Right.
you have to continue to do that, to monitor what kids are doing.
Right.
And these are some of the things that we continue to say in our schools is, get more involved, continue to monitor where your kids, who they're talking to. I mean, I remember my parents saying to me, I know who you are, but who you're hanging around with. Right?
Say, oh yeah,
And
fear.
and these are things that we have to continue to instill, so we can make sure that kids feel comfortable with the adults and help us. And as I look at, when we're seeing some things in our schools, what we have seen is that our kids are asking for help, which is, to me, is a great first step. So now we have to have those caring adults, our administrators, our counselors, our social workers, our psychologists, our teachers, really to find a way to help our students.
Well, and when you are in middle and upper school and you have diversity of contacts, because whether they're in music or they're beginning debate or they have their classroom teachers, hopefully they find a compassionate person to listen, and that's the one to whom they go. If they choose at that point because they think it's silly or they're too smart, to talk to their parents. And two, it's very difficult if you have, I mean, it's all about communication and being able to find the right people who will be your mentors and espouse the right advice or listen and then find a pathway for help. But I think of so many parents that really are, you said it, are almost scared to be involved. And we need to call out to the parents because they need to help another parent work through the process.
Absolutely, and this is where we need them in our schools. I mean, I've said it from day one. This is, 320,000, Mary, you said it. I only have 40,000 employees. So they outnumber us. The kids outnumber us.
Yes.
So we need the entire community, and this is the beauty about this community. They wrap their arms around our kids. So we need them all to come in and help us. And I think that's the piece that, I continue to call on the adults to come in and find ways to help our children. The kids in our schools are facing some adult issues that we have to help them, and their brain is really not fully developed. Right. So how do we as adults help them cope with their issues that they're facing, or just being a teenager?
Well, we had that,
exactly.
But we didn't have this technology piece that is a killer and a hidden way for people to be cruel to each other. Right. And so I'm just hopeful that every school will have this parenting unit that is sort of a conduit to listen listen,
Yep.
and then where there are issues, get them to the right
Support system.
adult support system to move it. And it has to be open communication at every grade level all the way through, even though you're going to see it in your child if you've got significant issues,
Yep.
or if you listen to your child and you hear repeatedly about a particular student. Somebody, it's not that they're going to be violent and you don't want to accuse anybody, somebody specifically of something.
Right, and the signs are, you start seeing and start noticing the signs where they start telling you, you know, I mean, if your kid is doing their homework throughout, you know, K-5, and then you get into some space where they start doing their homework, where they just start saying, I don't want to go to school. There's
There
a
you
reason.
are.
There's a reason. Ask the questions, and then call the school.
Right.
So then we can start looking to see how do we then refocus, so then we can bring them back and not lose the individual student. And that's the piece that I continue to say, let us know, call us, so then we can help us.
Right, and it is confidential,
Yep.
I would imagine. For the parent, you just hit the nail on the head there too, again. Well, duh, you're a superintendent and you know children so well. When they really are reticent to go to school,
Yep.
and there's
something
this
there.
element there needs to be a contact. And certainly most of us as parents will know which teachers the child finds an affinity with. And so, well, that's wonderful. So from the parent, what are we doing with engaging students? I happen to be one, other than I remember growing up in the days of possible attack during World War II, I'm that old, that we would go under our desks.
Yeah.
And I mean, whether you were in kindergarten, first and second, but we really weren't told. They would say it's a fire drill or something. So it wasn't frightening. You don't want to frighten these little elementary children, and they want to have a healthy, happy learning experience in
Absolutely.
school. So it's up to the adults to
Correct.
make sure they do.
Yeah.
But your drills, now let's do it at each section. There's an elementary level, a middle school, and certainly the high school, and the spectrum has to change based on the assessment of the child's age.
It does, and these are the things, I mean, you know, we have to do, obviously, under the law, we have to do drills across, you know, fire drills, safety drills, you know, and all the different drills that we have to do. They're age appropriate for our kids.
And they tell you how often you have to have them.
Correct.
Regarding we have earthquake drills here.
Yes, absolutely, and we have to do 10 a year.
10 earthquake drills?
No, 10
drills.
in totality.
Okay.
In totality, we have to do 10 a year. And so
Okay.
what we have to do, Mayor, is just really make it age appropriate for our kids. So because I don't want my elementary school kids
I don't want them frightened.
to be frightened. But here's, you know, when you look at the high school and the middle school, we have to take them seriously because it's important. You know, last year, I tell you, you know, one of the things when we had the shooting at Canyon Springs outside of our campus, at the end of the day, I compliment that entire staff because they went into a lockdown mode to protect the kids. But I can tell you when I went there immediately and when I got there, you know, the kids were, even high school kids, they're kids, they're children. I always say they are children,
Right.
no matter
Kids
how old they are.
Kids are baby goats,
They are.
and I find it insulting when I hear. I do it myself, but they are children.
They are children, but you know what? They were there and they were in lockdown for 3 hours because they were so afraid, but they didn't want to leave. And finally pulling them out of that trauma. So imagine the elementary school kids.
Oh, no,
So,
I
so,
can't.
so this is, we make them age appropriate. But you know, it's unfortunate we're in this age that we have to do that because we have to make sure that the safety of our kids and our staff is our priority.
Right.
So we don't want to take them for granted either. You know, the drills, because that's when you get to relax.
Yeah. Well, in middle school, I mean, you have students then, hopefully, that are coming into a time of life where they're beginning to understand what their choices mean, and that they are being given that prerogative of making their own choice to some extent.
Correct.
So there's an element now at this time that they can accept. There are times that we may have to do this caused by this, because now they've learned from their peers as
Right.
well as TV and the internet and everything else, the horrors that are there.
Right.
So do you do more in-depth and more personalized training in the middle and upper school than you would overall?
Well, I think when we look at the middle school and the secondary schools, middle school and the high schools, it's just, to explain the process, and then we do really look at and practice and a little bit more in depth in what their responsibility as young people, as adolescent, as teenagers, as they go through that process. It's a little bit more in depth for the secondary than there is for the elementary school.
Okay,
as
so
well.
I could understand that you would have a major assembly for the whole school conducted by a principal, but then I would think in each classroom,
Exactly.
that's where let's have a Q&A,
Yeah.
let's talk about the seriousness
Correct.
of your thinking when you do X, that this could happen.
Correct, and that's when we do that in the classroom with the
Okay.
teachers, because the teachers also have to be trained
Right, of course.
as well, because they're the ones that are going to protect the kids. And that's, the training is more personalized and more in depth in the classroom than it would be on an entire faculty.
And is that left to
classroom.
the principal to decide how many times he or she a year wants to do it? Or does it come down from the top that you say you will conduct, after we train you, this number of...
We do, and that's, the numbers have to be, and they have to let us know when they do it. Not necessarily, we don't dictate when you do it, because obviously the school's
Right,
schedule and,
right.
assessment, or whenever they're doing a lot of the different things, we leave that up to the school principal
Okay.
to make that decision. But, the 10 have to happen on a yearly basis.
And I would imagine, too, that in some families, middle school and upper school students, because they are separating out, don't let their parents know what's happening. Is
Yeah.
there a resource, a non-judgmental resource that a parent can call in to see when these meetings are taking place in the classroom? So it's a wonderful entree for the parent then to be involved.
Well,
with a Q&A with the child.
Well, no, we when the training happens in the school and in the classroom with the teachers, that is not, that's not something that we really communicate out,
okay.
because one of the things that, we have to be really careful with the safety and how much we also share.
Okay.
And I hate to say this, but with the bad guys, right?
Right.
Because then some of those safety drills and some of those safety plans, we have to then keep confidential as well.
Right.
Because
No, I would understand
we'd
that, sure.
we'd have to make sure that what we do in our safety plans, that we protect, and then we know what's going on in our codes and our principles, so then we don't let the bad guys know what we're doing.
Okay, my only thought there is, as a caring, loving
I know.
parent, I would want to know that if
Right.
my child asked me at dinner a strange question, and I would say, well, where'd that come from?
Right, right.
That at least I know that, and then maybe you do it at the beginning of the year.
We do
so-
in the communication that, when we do our open house, with our community.
All right,
with
so
our parents.
we've touched, we could
Yeah.
spend a whole day on
I know
every
we
one
can.
of these.
Yeah.
Tell me about security. I think I asked on the last time you visited that we have private security, and it's a private security, it's not Metro, but Metro helps train your security.
Our police department, we have
Yes.
our own
That's what I
our
wanted
own
to go-
police department. The chief of police for CCSD reports to me by law.
Okay.
And we have 193 police officers.
Wow.
Throughout our entire school system. We have a traffic motorized police as well to really look at the traffic around our facilities during the school day. We also, one of the things that we did this year, we have 2 police officers on every high school campus.
Okay.
We added police officers to our career technical academies as
Good.
well, and our magnets, because we didn't have
Right.
that. And I said, no, they're high school. We should
Well,
have.
if it's good for one, it's good for all. Let's not
Absolutely.
cheat on something.
And
here.
then we have our middle school.
Yeah.
We're working to put one station area in every middle school, to really, for our secondary schools, because that's where we see some of the biggest discipline challenges that we're seeing across our schools. So our secondary schools, that is our effort. In the elementary, we have them rotating
Okay.
across all the elementary schools.
Good. But it starts in the morning at the crosswalks. Now,
does.
we have wonderful volunteers that from our residents that serve
Right.
through the wind and the cold.
They do.
And the
And the heat.
right.
And the heat, that's right.
And so, but the police part of that, are they at early in the morning or staying late at night when it's dark now?
Yeah, no, we have a
The
graveyard.
police part, not the...
Our police, and we have a graveyard shift. I mean, we cover all our
Okay.
football games. We have, it's an entire police
Well,
force.
the football games, you
that's a
got to
little
watch
different.
the parents. I mean, my gosh, as we get in there,
I know.
everything's about winning.
Yeah.
So, but you do, and you have 193. That's absolutely
We do,
outstanding.
and last year we also have that we purchased 4 canine.
Aha.
So we have 4 canine officers as well. That
Hopefully with the dog.
with the dog, with the
Not just the officer.
no, not just the officer. We have the 4 dogs.
Good.
For weapons detection.
And I could ask you a question, see if you've done your homework. Do you know the names of the 4 dogs?
No,
Next time.
no, they're gonna get mad. Ziggy, I think Ziggy is
Okay.
one. I'm gonna have to. They're gonna get upset
Oh,
with
right.
me next time
I'll
they see
tell
me.
you. Sorry to do that to you. I should have told you I'm going to ask you that. So these are dogs that they rotate through the different campuses, only middle and upper school, I would assume.
Correct, and it's a community, right? Obviously, not to scare, and they're not the old, I don't want to say old, but they're not the German Shepherd, as
Well,
a
they're
pointer.
scary, too.
But so we're using, they're just trained for weapon detection, and the beauty of it is that they can, search an entire hallway within 2 minutes.
Isn't that incredible?
And instead of having to go in and do all the different things with with our police officers, so it's now our canine. They're great. They come in. I was visiting a school and they do random searches on their own.
Well, I think it was on the Clark County Commission channel. I thought I saw one of those training
Yeah.
programs. It was
Absolutely.
fascinating to see what they do. But they go through the middle schools at random. Nobody knows they're coming. They're just there, middle and upper school
Yep.
as well. So do you, the drills you mentioned, you're required by federal law to have 10?
Yeah, and state law.
Okay, and state law. And then let's talk a little bit about the buildings and most importantly, technology. How is that, and well, let's start off first, searches. When somebody comes into a building, we know every time we go into the airport, we've got all these detection and everybody's getting smarter every day and using different types of materials that they try to scam through.
Right.
Is it mandated and is it in every middle and upper school that you have to walk through? What do you have?
No, not through metal detectors, Mayor. When we looked at research and the experts said, that the metal detectors, they don't work, right? I mean, you're really trying to say, okay, how do you get 3,000 kids? First of all, we have schools that are open, so to enter a single point is going to be a challenge.
When you say they're open, you mean there are many access points?
Many access points, I'm sorry. Many access points to get
into the building.
To get into our campuses. So it's how do you limit that? That was number one. Number
and
two.
So how do you answer what you just asked? How do you limit?
Well, we have some schools that have tried to put, different
Types
I
of-
wouldn't say not barricades, but different walls,
Barriers of
different,
sorts.
different fences
Okay.
to try to limit the access points. That's number one. Number two is then, putting 3,000 kids to get to school on time through a metal detector doesn't work.
Okay.
Right? I mean, it's
Well,
it's-
and as you
it's a
said at the
challenge.
beginning of that question was that, it's advanced so much now, it may not be metal.
Right. So those are some of the things that when the experts told us, for schools, the metal detectors don't work. So now what we're doing is we're doing random searches. We're doing random searches so the kids don't know. Nobody knows.
All right, so random search. Here I come to school. Who is random searching me? A woman because I'm a girl? Or, I mean, I think out
Yeah.
of the box, having
I-
two sons who are lawyers, married to a lawyer, I know, and everybody's got their own x-rays in their trunk and their lawsuits ready to file. So how do we, how do you do this?
It's a computer program that selects the schools
Okay.
and then we then notify the school the day before and say to the administrators. Now they're done by the administrators because it's not a police activity. Because if it was a police activity, it'd be different. So we're
Okay.
not. So it's an administrative task for our principal. So then we let the principal know.
You
I don't
call
even
me.
know.
Okay,
I
so-
don't even know.
Oh,
So the
okay.
random searches are done by my chief operating officer through a computer program, and then
So I'm a principal
You
of,
get a call-
of a junior high or a high school.
you
and
get
I
a call
get
the night before or an
Night
email
before.
and says
Okay.
you need to do the random search.
Which means how many students?
It's up to now. It's all random.
Okay.
So then the school. So it's either a random hallway or a random entry as you're walking into school.
Okay.
So then the principal will say that they're told, okay, you got to search, and it's not the
A
the
pat
entire.
down?
It's not the entire. It's they walk in and they do with the wands, and they say every 11 kid walking into for the next 30 minutes.
Okay.
So that is just that's how random it is.
Okay.
So we're not identifying
Okay.
individual
it's a wand,
student,
so
and
it's
it's
not-
a wand,
okay.
right? So then it
And right there in front of every other student selected.
as they're walking in.
Right, because otherwise, what good is it if they think that they don't know what's happening? It's
Correct.
good as a warning. You could be searched.
It's more deterrent.
Deterrent,
And that's
right.
what I've heard from there's a superintendent's advisory council with with our high school students, and what they say is that they really appreciate how random it is, because now it's sending a message to the community, to our schools, that we're not going to tolerate it, and we don't know when it's coming.
Good.
So the same school could get picked every week. We don't know. I mean, it's just
Okay.
all computerized.
And then the report goes back to you, or no report goes directly to the Board of Trustees?
No, it
What?
goes to my COO. I'm
Okay.
asked, I get updated. We found,
Right.
this year we found a pocket knife. We haven't found anything, but pocket knife, and that's really
In
all
this
we-
year so far?
In this year
Nothing.
so far. So,
Isn't that awesome?
so that's the one
That's
thing
good
that
news.
for me it is.
Yes.
For me it is.
Yes.
So,
Well, I mean, and that's the whole thing, is all of us who love living here and love the quality of life, it does demand, and it goes back to these meetings with the children in middle and upper
Right.
school to help them understand that you're an individual, take care of yourself and set
Correct.
an example, and don't worry about Johnny or Mary. You take care of yourself.
Yeah.
But see something, say something,
Absolutely,
and then
and
with
let
the
us know.
dogs at a random time going around. So hopefully you'll increase the canine piece of it.
we're hoping, we're hoping to add more, but obviously it's a budgetary, because
Right. Well, you have 217 elementary, approximately. You have maybe
Approximately.
a couple new. You have 59 middle
We
schools.
do.
Ha! And then you have 49 high schools, and that's
Abs-
probably, I think you probably added another one there too. So when you think of the man hours or the canine hours that are there, and then these random searches, and so far the reports, I mean, those are excellent reports. How about the canine unit? What have they found so far?
Last year they found a gun.
Last year.
Last year,
okay.
and then this year we found one.
One
this year.
gun.
Yeah.
Okay, and at a high school or middle school level?
Both high school.
Okay, and same high school, or hopefully
No, they were both different high schools.
Okay, with a different component of residential and bus in.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, a little more about technology. I just, I love it
know.
because it's the greatest piece of communication we've ever been even dreaming of. And I think back when I was a little girl and the Dick Tracy watch, and now I don't know if you have one. I
No,
don't.
I have. I still have my.
You're
yeah,
normal.
I'm
well,
not the
we're a
Apple
different
Watch.
generation. But what is there? What are the hopes of the district to use technology proactively? Girls' bathroom, boys' bathroom. I mean, we don't know. Again, middle and upper school. To protect the student and to protect the staff. I mean, staff sometimes are, focused upon?
Yeah, no, what you know,
What
with
are
the
you doing with
Yeah,
technology?
no, and well, we have to update our camera system, right? I mean, we have some cameras that are outdated, and so those are
What's
some.
that budgetary item? Would you know offhand when you're talking? Well, I mean, more significantly, well, every school, and again, I said there were, what did I just say?
49 high schools and 50 middle schools. So we have to update. We do have cameras in the elementary schools as well. So we're moving to newer technology. So that's part of the work that we're doing now in researching. I think now, I saw a presentation on some cameras that now you don't need a lot of the wiring. As
Oh, right,
our
right.
cameras are getting better,
Right.
and even for facial recognitions and different things. So
Right.
we're in the early stages of investigating some
Well,
of
and let me tell you, drones.
I know.
Low-flying drones, or drones that can come and see through
Yeah.
buildings, that's coming as well. But the cost and projecting,
Right.
and yeah, I'm a big one, don't reinvent the wheel. If somebody's doing it better, which is, best practices and all that, sometimes it's a total waste of time, but really we know when they're models. And I think I told you on your last visit here to Hello Mayor that when Oscar and I were planning on moving to Las Vegas, it was number 2 in the highest quality education in the country,
Yeah.
right behind New Trier, New Trier Township in Illinois. And when you have, what are you doing, how do you, and that's a high school, but what do you do? And so have you found a school system that has quality technology that it would be wise to invest in now?
Yeah,
now,
no. Well,
because it changes so quickly.
It does, and that's the thing that we're looking at. Look at today. It's going to change in 5-6 months. That's how fast technology moves. So we're looking at what other school systems are doing across the country,
Right.
Not only for safety but also for our kids, because our kids now, as you know, Mayor, they just communicate within with its. I don't even know. I mean, they were telling me, my student advisor, they're saying Remind 101, Instagram this, and then I said, well, look at Facebook. They're like, oh, superintendent, that's for old people.
Oh, let me know who that person is.
You know that? And I said, well, I just got on Facebook, and they're like, oh, you're behind the times, superintendent. And that's how we have to move so fast for our kids, because their brain is wired differently. And that's
Well, and sometimes the connections aren't so good.
So we're that's one of the things that we're looking at. And we do have great models here, because we do have some schools that have some phenomenal principals that are ahead of time, and they've been doing some work with Google and different things that we're learning from one another, but then also looking at what other systems are now.
Well, and hopefully they're working with the career and technology school students. I mean, to
Absolutely.
me, to have a student on that committee, they're brilliant, some
are.
of them. And of course, that's where the ideas are coming. I mean, I know the day is, while we're working on autonomous vehicles, I know the day will be, and probably in the next 2 decades, all the airplanes will be flying from the ground. I will not be on them, but
on their own.
yes,
Absolutely.
yeah. And so just knowing that, but do you have a large group in your technology department? And I don't know how the Board of Trustees puts aside funds. It's an open bucket. I mean, we find that in city government,
I know.
because there's so many parts to it, which isn't part of this discussion. But
No, we do. Well, we have our technology, our technology budget and different things that we have there. Now, one of the things that we do within the legislature appropriation is that we get a little bit appropriated for technology, not enough.
Right.
And that's where we need to do a better job in the state to be able to fund, because our kids are a little bit behind here in other parts of the country.
Well,
because
and
of the
that's
technology and the
something
lack of
takes me
funding.
off of, and I got to check
know.
my time because it goes so quickly with you.
I know.
And I just am in my favorite subject of all, which is children and
Absolutely.
education.
I know that.
And opportunity. I mean,
Yeah.
my gosh, you get an education, you learn to read, you learn to think critically,
You're
and your life is just
opens.
wide open.
It
and I
is.
don't care where you live, to whom you're born, how poor or rich you are, the formula is the same. Read, learn, develop your math skills, and the world's your own to
Absolutely.
command. But the question, well, there are too many things here that I want to go into. We have questions from the public.
Okay.
And the first one we've already covered because we're so brilliant here, but on their own accord, without a person reporting it first, how many weapons have dogs discovered, and what percentage of recoveries does it constitute? The reality is we already talked about the dogs and how great they are. And then question number 2, has any consideration been given to the possibility of having veterans with training acting as security? My granddaughter, this is from one of our questioners, attends a CCSD school, and I would gladly stand a post there several times a month for free. So are you working with our veterans and Arnie Stock, who's the head of our veterans villages, and so committed to, and they're looking for jobs as well. But I'm saying those who want to volunteer and help.
Well, we do have a volunteer, a process to volunteer in our schools. So that's just go on ccsd.net and go through that process with HR, our human resource department. But we do have obviously, as I mentioned, our own police department.
Right.
So I think, and actually one of the things that we're also looking at is for retired police officers that may want to come back in. And I think that's also a way, so within our HR department and in our own police department, there's ways, it goes back to any adult that wants to volunteer to help our kids, absolutely. So go through that process, through the volunteer process, and we can certainly.
So ccsd.net
and our
through
HR,
human resources. So take a look for anybody who's interested in that. Now, we haven't touched, there's several subjects, but I know time is limited. We haven't talked about bullying, and that's part of safety concerns, of course. And because children, through the remoteness of our handheld pieces and our laptops, there's an access of a new way to treat others. And it's
unfortunately.
Really, and so as a student begins to feel or sees a friend, sometimes bullies get backers to join in because they're fearful of being bullied themselves. The question is, how many times does a student have to exhibit antisocial, violent, dangerous behavior before a school can remove them?
So, that's, and I agree with you. I think that this is where the technology detaches our kids a little bit, and then we get into some of this spiral for our children, negative spiral for our children. One of the things that for us, we adopted a district-wide code of conduct this year. We've also been working with our school justice partnership, which is an entire community of leaders that are helping us, and that's where Dr. Hibbler, phenomenal, that helps us within that work. One of the things that, to me is the most important thing is once a child, we identify their misbehavior, if you will, is how do we address to change the behavior? Because one of the things, throwing them out, it's not the answer. We know that. Research is very clear. But keeping them in school to then disrupt the learning environment for others is also not the answer. So how do we then provide that support for that kid that's facing whatever they're facing? So, through the partnership, the School Justice Partnership, through all our networks, we have the Harbor, we have a lot of the different places where we can provide interventions to keep them learning. And maybe that's the school where they're at, the comprehensive school is not the right spot. But finding ways to then really address the challenges for that child.
Do you have a psychologist in every school?
Not
or
in every
school. Shared?
Not in every school.
How many schools does, I recall through my children who were at Clark and Hyde Park and George Harris, elementary level, they shared, I think, 5 schools.
Yeah.
What do we do today, approximately?
It's very similar.
It's all money. Everything boils down to funding all the time, and if you don't get enough from the legislature,
correct,
that is an issue. How about at middle school?
It's I don't have the numbers with me, Mayor, but they haven't changed much.
Isn't that tragic?
on the school psychologists. They're you know, I believe the number is, you know, on student. I don't want to give you a number because
No,
it just
right.
it's they're overwhelmed. And
Well,
so
and
we
at
have
the high
psychologists,
school,
we got social
right.
workers,
And
we
you
have
have your
counselors,
deans in the high
and
school.
yeah,
But I remember at Clark High School and talking to the dean for my boys, and he said, I am so consumed by truancy and other details. It's very difficult for me to have the time to sit
just
down and get.
individually.
Yeah, and so again, it's a matter of funding, which I was going to ask you a moment ago, but I don't want to lose this train of thought. To me, we are one of 4 states in the entire country that has a legislature that meets every other year. It's appalling, and it's dinosauric, if there is such a word. And we need to move to have it meet every year, 1 year in the north, 1 year in the south.
Right.
And I'm really been hard at work trying to make sure we pull all of us together to have this happen.
That's good.
The other piece, too, is every other year, about a third of the assembly is brand new to their position. So they're having to learn their role, as well as us on the backside trying to get in and plea a case for more funding most often. So as it affects, and you mentioned this before, I mean, the most precious jewel for all of us are our children.
And that's right.
And so that needs to take priority. And so as we deal with the psychologist or psychiatrist, the process, how many times, is that quantifiable for you? How many times does a student have to exhibit these behaviors before they get into something, but not being accused wrongly by somebody who's got a thing out to get that one?
So there's not a certain, right, there's not a certain number, because it depends on the situation. It depends on what the challenge may be for that student. Now, obviously, there's some infractions that are automatic. You bring a weapon to school, you're out.
No, wait. You're
expelled from the
out?
school. You're expelled from the school, and then you go to to an alternative place. You're not going to go back to that.
But how do you help me? I have a child who cares, who thinks he's funny, and takes a weapon that he found at his grandmother's house, and she doesn't even know it. Brings it to school for show and tell, because they learned that in elementary school. Fine, is apprehended at school because of the detectors of the little puppy. And now
we have no, it's in the state law, we have to expel them. They can't go back to that school.
And is there any, for the recourse for the parent who's blindsided here, where does that parent go aside from your lawyers?
Well, we do have alternative placements. For students, so they're not just out in the street. So we have, because we still
that makes it worse.
We still have to educate them. I mean, I'm going to tell you, Mayor. Last Friday, I went to Spring Mountain Youth Camp.
Oh yes.
To see where our kids are, they're
still
there.
We came here in '64. I'm not sure how old it is.
They're there for 6 months, and you're seeing, and we're providing an education, and I had a great opportunity to talk to kids, about their mistakes. But here's where we're over there, looking at ways to then, when they come back, they have skills. So we were there to do a green classroom.
Oh.
We're trying to give them skills. So when they come back, they're, if they come back into our setting, then they can also come back into the community and to work. So because you make a mistake, as a kid, as a teenager, we're giving you a second chance when you come back. So it's the same thing here. We have some of these schools here as well. Obviously they're court mandated, to go there. But here we have some behavioral schools where our kids, they're just pulled out of their school setting.
Well, and to me, when you see most of these youngsters, either they were treated so badly physically or mentally, emotionally by the parent or step-parent or somebody, then that's a norm for them, and so they exhibit that behavior. And it is, again, one-on-one, that somebody cares for me, somebody.
And that's the thing. That's where we look at how do we change the behavior, because we can't just putting them out in the street. It's not going to help the city.
No.
It's not going to help the county.
Yeah.
So how do we then give them the skills, put them in a place where they're going to be successful? And I'm going to tell you, the conversations that I have with our young people, they're remorseful. You know, for the most part, they're remorseful, but they just realize that somebody does care, and that's where we have to put our arms around our kids. One of the things that we passed in legislation, or really as a school system, one of our priorities, because you talked a little bit about this, Mayor, what happens to our kids at home.
Yeah.
You know, there was a bill that passed last year, Handle with Care. You know, that it was something that our board was a priority for our board. So, for example, I'm at home, there's a violent trauma at home.
Okay.
So now we have in this bill that now our police officers are notified. So now when the kid comes to school, we handle the kid with care. We then communicate with our counselors, with our administrators. So then we know, so Jesus had this event at home. So then we can then get them to then, you know, provide some support so they can get to the business of schooling.
Yeah.
And we didn't have that before, so we're you know, working with Metro, working with our police department, so
And
that we
our
have
courts,
some,
I'm sure, with the
Absolutely.
and Department of Family Services. I remember one of my children works in the burn unit at UMC, and had mentioned to me a couple of years ago about how when families go through family court and foster children, or a family is broken up because of some incident, that they were separating the children, and we needed a person, a contact at the school
right.
to be the sensitive eyes for that child who's not only had the problem at home like you've described, but now is separated from his or her siblings and is sort of like a throwaway.
Yeah, and so this helps us, Mayor. This really helps us get that student focus, or as much as possible, into the business of schooling. So then say, sweetheart, we know, right?
Yeah.
We know, we now handle you with care. We really are finding a way to then really help them to provide some support and say things are going to be okay. But at least it's
At
just
least
this,
a touchstone and a start.
because we know, right, that kids act out
Right.
for a reason. There's always, I used to always say when I was a principal to my teachers, there's always a story.
That's the truth.
There's always a story behind every kid.
Right.
So let's just get to know what their story is.
Before they become adults with bigger problems,
exactly.
acting out because of the pain they've had.
Yeah.
So I hate to ask you, but how much money did you get for that caring piece? You know, and
Zero.
Our constituents throughout Nevada, I'm sure, but certainly in southern Nevada, and I hear all the time for people out in the unincorporated area or Henderson, North, they call and they just, because they have an issue, and we try to redirect them. So sometimes it's education, it's the domestic violence thing that which was a case here. And there's another reason why we have to meet every year. The legislature determined on domestic violence that the muni courts should begin to have jury trials on domestic violence cases. And it says in the charter of the city we're not allowed to do that. We are prohibited in our charter.
Right.
And now we have to wait 2 years.
To be able to fix it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when you say you made the first pass on this and you got no funding,
Right.
and this is well beyond any teacher strike or
Right.
hitting the child in the classroom to provide the best academics you can and the best.
So we can teach them to read, write, and do arithmetic. Absolutely.
All right. And so it's a difficult situation, and I don't know. I did get a phone call yesterday because we were talking about the homeless situation in City Council yesterday. And a comment came out from one of the homeless supporters. So what are you doing with the homeless money? You could put that into our problem. Well, I know there was a commitment originally as it was passed throughout the state that the part of the marijuana money would filter into specifically the schools. So Are you allowed to say, have you received any of the funds
Well, this legislature
that we just had?
well, we just finished the 80th legislation. They put money, right? They put money into the education. Now, here's the thing.
General education fund for the state or the
For the
Clark
s-
County
for the
School
state,
District?
for the state.
Well, that doesn't mean you get it.
Well, that's exactly where I was going next.
Well, I can say it because
That's where I
I've
was
been
going
here
next.
longer.
That you have been, and the formula hasn't changed yet.
See, now that, well, first of all, we
We're
kinda
working
have
on
to,
that.
but we need the legislature meeting every single
We
year.
do.
I mean, we need to get up with the rest of the world, but the commitment to get those dollars in there, and we try to address, I mean, here to have counseling in this CARE program and have these dollars, and as well as for the accelerated student who wants to do more and get more advanced. I mean, these dollars help pay for everything, and that's so. At this point, none of the other than the going to the general fund of education, they haven't trickled down.
No, not
to,
yet.
Okay.
So yeah, and that's the thing. I'll tell you, Mayor, when I met with my student advisory, the superintendent student advisory, and one of the things, because I was just looking at all the different interests for them to solve and help me work on. Number one for them was mental health.
Yeah.
They're seeing it at home. It's not at home, but they're seeing it at school how it's affecting. And these are things that we need to really invest in our children. And I think, how we do that is we're going to need to work together as we did last session, is really to then invest in public education here in the state of Nevada.
Well, and to me, this piece of equipment, as I said, to transfer information so quickly is so phenomenal, especially when it deals with safety or it deals with health or anything of this great significance. This is unbelievable, but
Right.
it's a tool.
It's a tool.
And what it is doing to our youth, and you know this in education, that need for instantaneous response,
That's right.
the isolation it creates in these children. I see it
I
for
know.
having worked with the preschool through a high school level child for 26 years intimately. It's just, and we need the funds to be able to support.
this, because you'll walk into classrooms. I mean, I've seen it. I walk into classrooms and it's quiet, right? But they're all on their, they're all doing their work.
Well, we don't know if the teacher's in the back of the room. Some student may be buying new Nikes.
Maybe.
No,
you're right.
No, how do you teach when you got the
with their
laptop?
parents' credit card?
Oh my goodness! I'm going to leave it on a joke. Parents, watch out for your credit cards. And teachers, you're going to have to stand behind your students so you can see what's on the monitor. But anyway, I mean, oh my gosh, I have such a good time with you.
I do as well.
You're going to come back again.
Absolutely. I'm here, Mayor. Let me know.
Okay, well, I just love it. And thank you so much for being here. Thank you, everyone at home, for watching. We'll see you next time for another episode of Hello, Mayor. Have a great day. And everyone, just know he's phenomenal. He is great. So
thank you, Mayor.
We just, Dr. Jara, you are
I love it.
kind of a guy. Well, you can tell it. And I would think you could be the counselor in every classroom, every teacher in every classroom, and you just are beloved. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.